I think sometimes in life we push ourselves farther than we are actually capable of going because we feel pressured, uh, either by our peers or by life or even by ourselves. And I feel like when we push ourselves past those boundaries, sometimes it can be good. Sometimes it can be good. It depends what the boundaries are. But when it comes to pushing yourself past boundaries that you've set in place to protect yourself from recreating experiences that have negatively affected your life, I find that often we push ourselves to let go of those boundaries. And I think that it's important to remember the reasons why we have those boundaries in place and to remember that we matter enough to keep those boundaries. Especially when it comes to opening up your heart and really just deciding what it is that you want for your life and that you want to experience. I know for me, I've gone through a lot of relationships with family and friends and uh, romantic relationships as well, where I haven't had boundaries. And because I haven't had boundaries, I've gotten very hurt and I've allowed these relationships to not only control my life and how I feel, I've allowed these relationships to change who I am as a person. And something I've been learning lately is that keeping these boundaries aren't just necessary, they're detrimental to becoming a fully formed, self sufficient, independent, happy person. And when you realize that, that you are worth it, when you start to love yourself and you start to really enter that journey of healing from, PTSD and from like past hurt and really any situation you've gone through, even depression, lots of things. I know that people go through so much, and even though you've gone through so much, you have the ability to change it and you have the ability to change from being a victim, and you have the ability to change from really seeing yourself as a victim, to being the person in power and being the person in charge of your life and in charge of the situations that happen around you and how you allow life and people and relationships to affect you. You have that power. And by learning to set boundaries in place, I think that's the first step to changing your situation. By setting down those boundaries, if somebody does something that you don't necessarily like, you can say it. Don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to say, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, or I'm not ready for that yet, or I didn't like when you did that, it hurt my feelings, and that's okay. It's okay to vocalize those things, and I think that's something I didn't do properly for so long, was not setting those boundaries down in healthy ways. I would allow people to do things over and over and over again that hurt me to the point where I would have a breakdown and I would just completely crumble and explode at the person, at myself, or I would just cry for hours because I didn't know how to handle everything that was happening to me, I felt very much like a victim. And in a lot of cases, I actually was a victim of emotional abuse, physical abuse in some situations. And because I didn't put those boundaries down, I allowed those things to happen to me over and over again. And I actually ended up staying with a guy for 2 years who was physically abusive to me and emotionally abusive to me. He's actually my first daughter's father. And because I chose to stay with him for so long, because I had this illusion in my head that everything was going to change, I allowed him to hurt not only myself, but my daughter. And one day, I think I realized that this situation wasn't okay and it wasn't normal. And I understood finally that it wasn't my fault and I needed to get out of there. And I think that was the first time I ever really set boundaries down, and I left. I set those boundaries down, and I said, you aren't going to hurt me anymore, and you aren't going to hurt our daughter anymore. And this is it. I'm leaving. And because I set those boundaries down, that was the first step to me becoming a happier person and really helping my daughter to have a better life as well. And then, there are times along the road where I forgot to set those boundaries down, especially when it comes to family members. I know family members are really hard people to set boundaries with, because, especially parents, because you feel like you owe them so much because they've raised you and taken care of you. But you know what? You don't choose your parents. You don't choose your blood family. And if they are hurting you, if they are doing things to hurt you, I want you to know that you don't owe them anything, and you don't have to stay and put up with abuse because you feel indebted to them, or because you feel like you have to love them and have to be there with them because they're your family. You don't. And I mean, it's good to love people, of course, but it comes to a point where you love somebody so much that you allow them to keep taking advantage of you, and you allow them to keep hurting you. And what needs to come into realization is that you can still love them, but you can put the boundaries down, and you can walk away, and you can love them from afar. And that's okay. It's okay to love people from a distance, and a lot of the time it's actually so much healthier for you to love people from a distance. And what I really just felt weighing on my heart today was that, I needed to share this with people, because there's so many times when I've been in situations and I've forgotten that, it's okay to put my happiness above somebody else's needs. And, it's actually very important to do that, because if you find yourself at a place where you're constantly breaking yourself down, trying to be there for other people, trying to make other people happy with you, even though they're never going to be satisfied, you get very depressed, and sometimes that depression can lead you to suicidal thoughts. It can lead you to just feel completely unhappy and devastated in your own life. It can lead you to want to be somebody you're not and try and change yourself for these people. And I don't think that that's healthy, because you know what? You are beautiful and you are perfect exactly the way you are. And no matter what, you will always be perfect the way you are, even through your mistakes, even through your downfalls. And if somebody is trying to make you somebody who you're not or change you, then that relationship isn't the right one for you, or that family member who doesn't understand you or doesn't accept you and appreciate you, maybe there needs to be some space put there so that you can be the person you need to be in order to live the life that you need to live, because we are all here for a purpose. And if we aren't allowed to live our purpose, then we're just going to be sad and miserable, because we're going to feel like something's missing. And I just really wanted to enforce that boundaries are so important. Boundaries are so important. Yeah, just love yourself and realize that you are important enough to say, hey, I think that this is wrong and I don't like what you're doing to me, and I will not allow it to continue. I think that is very important. Just love yourself and take care of yourself, and don't ever feel like you have to put aside your own needs and your own feelings to make somebody else happy or make somebody else satisfied with you as a person. Because you are enough and you are worthy and you don't have to be a victim anymore. Okay? So that kind of sums up, I guess, what I've been talking about. Yeah. And in case nobody told you today, you are loved. You are so deeply loved. And you are worth everything because you are so special. And I hope that you never forget that. Have a beautiful night, everyone.